The city of Ashmere used to be a quiet one, a sleepy town where the loudest sounds were school bells, dog walkers chatting in the morning, and the distant hum of church bells on Sundays. But that quiet was shattered when the hospitals began filling, first slowly, then suddenly. Doctors spoke in hushed voices. Nurses whispered rumors in break rooms. Because the virus they were seeing wasn't following the rules. HIV. Not one or two isolated cases. Dozens. Then hundreds. The curve was exponential. First in the poorer districts, then creeping toward the schools, the suburbs, even nursing homes. And none of it made sense. Children, seniors, married couples who had been monogamous for decades. Entire classrooms being called in for testing. None had histories of drug use, unsafe sex, or even blood transfusions. Yet the results were coming back the same, positive. The hospitals were overwhelmed. Clinics turned away patients. Testing labs couldn't keep up. Families were left in limbo for weeks. At St. Helens Pediatric Clinic, a mother crumpled to her knees outside the doors, clutching her son's test result in her trembling hands. Her boy, just 9 years old, had tested positive. He's never even kissed anyone, she sobbed. Her cries echoed down the sidewalk. Others turned to look, but no one spoke. Everyone was thinking the same thing. How? The local news tried to downplay the panic. We're working with experts, one anchor said, and we believe this is an isolated outbreak. But then, one by one, the headlines shifted. First local, then regional, then national. HIV cases surge in small city, cause unknown. Children infected, no links found. Is this outbreak deliberate? And then came the press conference. Dr. Margot Levine, head of Ashmere Public Health, stood pale behind a podium, visibly shaken. We have reason to believe, she said, voice cracking, that this may not be a natural outbreak. We are exploring the possibility of an intentional spread. Gasps filled the room. Intentional. The word stuck in everyone's throat like poison. That night, the city did not sleep. Parents checked and rechecked their children for symptoms. People lined up outside clinics, demanding retests. Rumors flooded social media. Some blamed vaccines. Others pointed to shadowy government experiments. One post claimed it was being spread through the water system. Another said it was airborne. None of it was true. But the truth was worse. No one knew anything. The only thing authorities knew was that people were getting infected. Rapidly. In places where it shouldn't be possible. At a nursing home on the edge of town, 3 residents tested positive. None had been sexually active in decades. Their only recent exposure? Haircuts from a local barber. But that detail didn't stand out at the time. Not yet. By the end of the second week, cases passed 600. That included 42 elementary school children, 17 senior citizens from 3 different retirement homes, a priest, a 13-year-old boy who had just made the soccer team, and a newborn, just 3 weeks old. Every new result was a fresh stab of horror. Schools shut down. Businesses closed. Tourism vanished overnight. Ashmere had become a ghost town. The CDC sent a special task force. But even they were stunned. Their models didn't apply. They couldn't trace transmission. There were no shared needles, no sexual contact chains, no infected blood transfusions. Just random, scattered devastation. One official was caught off camera whispering to a colleague. It's like someone's walking through the city, choosing people. It was on day 18 that the first real clue emerged. A 9-year-old girl named Lacey tested positive. Her mother confirmed the girl had visited a small shop downtown, a quaint place run by a quiet man who only took walk-ins. She said he'd been kind, gave Lacey a lollipop, and even sang an old folk song as he cut her hair. She'd gone alone. Her mom waited in the car. Suddenly, other parents remembered similar details. A man, a small but modern barbershop. No staff, just him. Then came the photo. It was shared anonymously. An image of a clipper soaked in something dark, something red. The caption read, "This man cuts more than hair." The authorities weren't ready to say it aloud. But the city already had. This wasn't a virus spreading naturally. It was a weapon. And someone trusted, was wielding it. That evening, the mayor's office released a statement urging calm. But behind closed doors, a task force was formed. Their mission? To investigate every barbershop in the city, starting with the one no one remembered the name to the most known in the city. The emergency alert tone rang out at 6:45 a.m., piercing the early morning stillness. Ashmere's residents woke to another chilling announcement. HIV cases had reached 843. City Hall was flooded with officials, medical experts, law enforcement, and frightened citizens. No one had clear answers, only more questions. The mayor declared a public health emergency. A red banner scrolled across the bottom of every local news station. Stay calm. Avoid contact. Testing centers open until midnight. Inside the war room, where experts huddled around maps and case files, one thing was becoming painfully clear. There was no common link. Each case felt like a cruel lottery. A bus driver in his 60s, a toddler, a teenager who'd just made honor roll, an accountant, a dog groomer. None of them were part of overlapping sexual networks. None had received blood transfusions. None used intravenous drugs. And most disturbingly, most of them didn't even know each other. Medical experts from across the country were flown in. Epidemiologists, virologists, behavioral psychologists. The CDC set up mobile testing centers and surveillance teams. They combed through donation records, tattoo parlors, dentist offices, hospital waste bins, anything that might offer a lead. But every thread unraveled. At the center of it all stood Dr. Ria Mohan, a renowned infection control specialist, brought in to calm the storm. She stood in front of a whiteboard littered with red markers and sticky notes. Her voice was steady, but behind her eyes, exhaustion. The infection pattern doesn't follow sexual transmission, she said. It suggests close contact contamination, but not sexual. A silence fell over the room. What does that even mean? One officer asked. Hands, skin, objects, possibly saliva. But it's not acting like HIV is supposed to. The room buzzed with disbelief. Could it be airborne? Waterborne? Mutated? But every test came back negative. Whatever was spreading was doing so selectively. By the end of the day, a new fear emerged. Parents began pulling their children from schools. Desks sat empty. Cafeterias were silent. Principals tried to reassure communities, but no one believed them. Not after the children started getting sick. At St. Francis Elementary, school nurse Belinda Owens had just clocked in when she heard the scream echo down the hall. A teacher called for help. A student had collapsed. Nurse Owens ran to room 3B and found a 10-year-old boy on the floor, shaking, pale, lips cracked. His backpack was still on. His eyes fluttered. Emergency services were called. The boy was rushed to Ashmere General Hospital. Nurses took one look at his symptoms and ordered an immediate rapid test. Minutes later, the results stunned them. Positive. The staff stood frozen. One of them dropped the clipboard. The boy had never been sexually active, never been hospitalized, had never left town. His only activities included soccer practice, Sunday school, and piano lessons. The only recent event of note, a free back-to-school haircut day held 2 weeks ago at Cuts by Jay. Meanwhile, the chaos spreads. Clinics run out of test kits. Protesters gather outside City Hall, accusing the government of hiding the truth. Rumors claim it's a bioweapon. A conspiracy begins forming online, saying the government is infecting people on purpose. Others point fingers at immigrants, at doctors, at school staff. People begin turning on one another. Trust erodes. Some families flee the city entirely. But what no one notices, what goes buried in the chaos, is a small report filed by a school janitor. A girl, he claims, left the nurse's office crying earlier that week. Her reason? She said her scalp hurt. The janitor wrote down something odd in the margin of the report. She mentioned a man with cold hands who cut too close to the skin. The report is dismissed. Filed away. But it would prove to be a clue. A very important one. The city was unraveling. Doctors grasping at theories, citizens accusing each other, and officials fumbling to calm a storm they didn't understand. But in a tiny apartment above a Vietnamese bakery, one woman was working quietly, methodically. Her name was Nina Quan, a former investigative journalist turned freelancer after a newsroom layoff. Nina had a reputation for going places others feared. She didn't have a team, a grant, or a press badge anymore. Just her laptop, a cracked phone, and that gnawing instinct that something was being missed. She started by mapping the known infections. Not the official list. Those were filtered through agencies, but reports from support groups, Reddit threads, whispered Facebook posts. People who didn't want their names in a database, but were desperate to understand what had happened to them. It was chaos at first, pins on a digital map that looked scattered, but then a shape began to form. A 2-mile radius. almost circular, and dead center. A crumbling, nondescript barbershop tucked between a pawn shop and a liquor store on Ashwood Avenue. Cuts by J. Nina stared at the name. It had never come up in press conferences. No one on the health task force had mentioned it. But as she zoomed in on her victim map, she noticed something strange. Almost every single one of the infected had either lived, worked, or frequented places within walking distance of that shop. It was a pattern, a terrifying, precise pattern. Nina grabbed her recorder and began making calls. The first person she spoke to was Valerie Quinn, a widow whose husband had passed 2 weeks prior from AIDS-related complications. They'd been married 22 years. Monogamous. No infidelity. No risk factors. He went to that barbershop every week, Valerie said, her voice trembling. I always thought the place felt wrong. Something in the way it smelled. Like old chemicals and metal. She paused. I told him once it reminded me of a hospital basement. Nina jotted down every word. Next was Jillian Cortez, a single mom whose 8-year-old son had tested positive. He wanted to look nice for picture day, Jillian said, barely holding back tears. His regular barber was closed, so we walked into the one down the block. Cuts by J. The barber, she recalled, barely spoke. Just nodded, asked how short, and started cutting. He wore gloves. Moved mechanically. The haircut was so nice and cheap at the same time. 2 weeks later, her son started complaining of headaches. By the end of the month, he was in a hospital bed. Nina's investigation grew. She joined Facebook memorial pages, scanned obituaries, searched hashtags like hashtag Ashmere Outbreak, hashtag unexplained HIV, and hashtag YUS. Slowly, she gathered photos of victims. Then one night, scrolling through old public photo albums tagged in the area, she saw it. A teenager named Malik posted a selfie a few weeks before his death. Behind him, barely visible, was a red barber chair. A few scrolls later, a different victim, a woman named Teresa, posted a smiling photo holding her daughter. Same floor, same mirror frame, same faded price list poster taped on the wall behind them. Nina's heart thudded. She searched harder, and there it was. 4 separate victims. Different ages. Different backgrounds. Same background. Same chair. Same barbershop. The next morning, Nina returned to the shop. It was still open. The windows were covered in newspaper, despite being daytime. A faded, open sign buzzed weakly in the corner. She didn't go in. She just stood across the street and stared. After several minutes, the door creaked open. A man stepped out. Tall. Wearing a long coat despite the heat. Dark gloves. A black barber's case in hand. He didn't notice her. But something was wrong. His movements were stiff, robotic even. His eyes were empty, like he was moving on autopilot. He walked down the street and vanished into a narrow alley. Nina didn't follow. She turned and hurried home. That night, she uploaded the 4 victim photos into an old collage maker and posted it to a small conspiracy subreddit. Within 10 minutes, a user responded. Wait, I got my hair cut there last week. The barbershop at the center of it all had nice reviews, valid business license, and all legal documents. It was nearly excluded out of the suspicion list because the barbershop was registered and everyone in the city knew it. Even those who didn't visit knew. Cuts by J. Nina Kwan, digging deeper than any official would dare, made more research about the famous barbershop. The door opened 6 days a week, and customers kept going in. Even now, locals had a name for the man who worked there. Black J. An odd nickname whispered more than spoken. No one knew where it came from. No one knew what it meant. When Nina asked around, she got the same response again and again. Quiet guy. Never seen him smile. Quite perfect at what he does. Uses modern tools, you know, and he gives dope fades. Always wears gloves. Real particular. Not a single person could tell her his real name or where he lived. One elderly man, who used to get a trim there, told her. It's like he's always been here. Just showed up one day and never left. Folks started calling him Black J because he wore this long black coat, even in July. The man shook his head. Felt like a funeral every time I went in. That was all Nina needed. One morning, before dawn, with the prior backing of the government, she slipped inside with the help of some experts, professional at opening locks smoothly without notice. At exactly 7 a.m., the barbershop was opened. In a corner, the barber stood with his back turned. Slowly, deliberately, he was sharpening a straight razor, long and gleaming, against a leather strap. He didn't acknowledge her entrance. Instead, he whispered to himself, a rasp that cut through the silence like a splinter under skin. They thought they could ruin my life. Now I ruin theirs. Another day to ruin their lives as they did mine. Nina's breath caught. She didn't speak. She didn't move. He continued, now methodically aligning rows of clippers on the counter. All electric models. Dips them into a little transparent container that contains a liquid red content in it looking like blood, and rinses them with another liquid to make the reddish stain on the clippers disappear. Nina scanned every inch, heart racing. Blood? She couldn't tell, but the color made her stomach twist. On top of the pile he brought out of a secret drawer lay a photograph, a younger man in a hospital gown, holding a clipboard. The words on the back were written in jagged pen. 1998, experiment number 76. HIV positive. Released. The man in the photo looked like a younger version of Black J. Nina backed away, her hands shaking. Nina was able to sneak out with her evidences when Black J stepped out at 8:30 to buy breakfast at a shop opposite his barbershop. Back at her apartment, Nina reviewed the evidence. Every thread, every whisper, every photo. It all pointed to one sickening conclusion. Black J wasn't just a recluse, he was a man wronged. But how? Why? And worse, how many had already sat in that chair, never knowing what was being passed on to them? The deeper Nina Kwan dug, the colder the story became. The chilling whispers, the rusted clippers, and that haunting photo under the sink weren't random. They were part of a timeline. A pattern of pain and vengeance woven in silence, hidden in plain sight. She returned to the city archives and began sifting through old court records. If Black J was acting with this level of secrecy and rage, there had to be a moment in his past, something buried, that broke him. It took her days. But then, in a stack of sealed case files from 10 years ago, she found it. Jason Elijah Cole, arrested in 2015, 24 years old. A barber apprentice working at a popular midtown shop. Clean record. No priors. Engaged to be married. The charge, sexual assault of a client. The accusation came suddenly, from a woman whose name was redacted due to legal protections. No physical evidence was ever produced. No DNA match. Still, the case moved forward. Media coverage was ruthless. Jason's name splashed across headlines. The case dragged for weeks. Until, quietly, the accuser recanted. I made a mistake, her statement read. It didn't happen. I was confused. Charges were dropped. But the damage was already done. Jason lost his job. His engagement fell apart. He was beaten and holding, repeatedly, and during one of those assaults, he was raped. Hospital records Nina unearthed confirmed it. He tested positive for HIV 3 weeks after release. There was no apology from the city. No reparation. No record of what happened to him after that. He disappeared. Nina's hands trembled as she matched the mugshot from the file with the grainy surveillance photo she had taken from inside the barbershop. It was him. Jason Cole was Black J, a man swallowed by the system, punished by the world, now haunting it in return. The story could have ended there. But Nina wasn't done. She needed proof, not just of his identity, but of his intent, of what exactly he was doing inside that shadowed shop. She returned to the street camera feed facing the back alley of the barbershop, one that had been recording silently for years due to local loitering complaints. Clips of Jason exits through the back door, carrying a small white basin and a transparent container. He kneels beside the drain, out of view of most bystanders, and begins meticulously scrubbing a set of clippers and bleach. But then, he does something strange. He unscrews the transparent container, and slowly, methodically, adds a few drops of a dark red liquid into the bleach. Every time, every night, Nina zooms in on the footage. It's clear now. The man wasn't sterilizing his tools. He was contaminating them. On purpose. With his own blood. The footage froze on Nina's screen. A quiet horror overtook her. Jason Cole wasn't seeking justice. He was seeking balance. And now, every innocent person who stepped into that shop, every child, every father, every neighbor, had unknowingly paid the price for a system's mistake. Nina didn't sleep for 36 hours. What she had in her hands was more than just a lead. It was a revelation that tied every impossible thread together. Every infected child, every elderly man, every heartbroken mother, It all pointed back to one unassuming corner barbershop and one man with a reason to hate the world. She compiled it all. The security footage showing Jason, Black J, adding drops of blood into the bleach solution. The secret recordings she made of Black J whispering while sharpening his clippers and contaminating them with the blood-like liquid in the transparent little container. The patient testimonies from families who innocently described the same location, the same barber, the same quiet voice and gloved hands. Even the timeline of HIV outbreaks mapped perfectly around that shop, each case falling within days of a visit. She couldn't stay silent. Within hours, Nina released her findings, not through a traditional media outlet, but through a self-made, documentary-style expose posted on social media. A stark black-and-white title screen faded into the footage of the barbershop alley, the whispers, and the blood-stained clippers. It was called "The Chair That Cut Too Deep." The reaction was instant. The city exploded in rage. Thousands of shares. Hashtags like #BarberOfPain and #JusticeForTheInnocent trended globally. Victims began speaking out. Families cried on camera. Even a retired officer who once handled Jason's original assault case issued a statement of regret. The mayor held an emergency press conference. "We were wrong. We ignored the signs. And now, our community has paid the price." 2 days after Nina's expose went live, SWAT teams descended on the barbershop. But they were too late. The lights were off. The air inside stale. Dust in the corners. No signs of struggle, but something was unnerving. Behind the counter, tucked into a drawer beneath a stack of yellowed newspapers, they found it. A handwritten journal. A chilling, obsessive account of everything Jason had done. Dated, annotated, and filled with reflections warped by rage and sorrow. It read like a confession, but not one born from guilt. One born from justice, twisted in grief. They infected me with lies. I infect them with truth. Hair, skin, blood. None of them ever saw it coming. I didn't want to kill them. I wanted them to feel it. The slow knowing. The fading light. Officers stepped back in silence. Some cried. Others just stared. But one thing was unmistakable. Jason was gone. Neighbors said the shop had been closed for 2 days before the raid. No sign of him leaving. No car spotted. No bus ticket purchased. No credit cards used. He had vanished. Like he never existed. 3 days after the barbershop raid, the city was still trembling. Hospitals had set up temporary crisis units. Schools were closed. Churches held vigils. The name, Jason Cole, or more famously now, Black J, had become synonymous with both horror and heartbreak. Nina Kwan, the journalist who cracked the story, hadn't slept since the expose aired. Every hour, new victims came forward. Messages flooded her inbox, some thanking her, others pleading for more answers. But despite all the chaos, there was one question no one could answer. Where was Jason now? Then, at 6:42 a.m. on a rainy Wednesday morning, the tip came in. A woman from a neighboring county called in to the emergency hotline. She worked the night shift at a bus terminal. She was watching the local news on her break when the face on the screen made her drop her coffee. "He's here," she said. "He got on the 510 heading north. Quiet guy. Gloves." Said his name was Jay. The Intercept. The state police acted fast. They tracked the bus as it made its way along the foggy, winding roads through the rural outskirts. At 7:18 a.m., the bus was forced to stop at a routine checkpoint that suddenly appeared ahead, set up just minutes earlier. The officers boarded with calm precision. No sirens. No shouting. They walked aisle by aisle until they saw him. Third row from the back. Jason Cole. He didn't resist. In fact, he smiled. A strange, peaceful smile. Not smug, almost relieved. He stood up on his own, and for a long moment, he just stared out the window. Rain tapped lightly against the glass. The bus was silent, breathless, face to face. When they brought him off the bus in cuffs, local reporters had already swarmed the area. Cameras clicked, questions flew, but he said nothing until he locked eyes with Nina. She had come to confirm it for herself. Her hands trembled as she held her notebook, her phone, her truth. This was the man who had upended everything, who had shattered her town, and uncovered a system that had failed him. Jason tilted his head and met her gaze with calm. Then he spoke. "You exposed me. Good." His voice was clear, not angry, just tired. "But tell me, how many others did they destroy that you'll never know about?" Then he smiled again. And that was all he said. The evidence was overwhelming. The video, the witness testimony, the bloodstained clippers. It didn't take long. Jason Cole was charged with aggravated assault, deliberate HIV transmission, reckless endangerment, and multiple counts of attempted murder. When the judge read the verdict, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. Jason didn't blink. Life sentence. No parole. He was escorted out in chains. And still, he smiled. The final cut had been made. But something in his words lingered. How many others did they destroy that you'll never know about? The city had justice. But the wound? It would take much longer to heal. The days following Jason Cole's arrest were heavy with mourning, relief, and uneasy reflection. The city, which had lived in the shadow of fear for months, was now grappling with the aftermath of a wound far deeper than anyone could have imagined. Local officials moved swiftly. A crisis response task force was formed to address the damage left in Black Jay's wake. Clinics offered free HIV testing, counseling services, and medication for newly diagnosed individuals. Victims and their families received trauma care, both psychological and medical. There was no cost. This was the city's apology, though no one said the word. At the center of it all stood Nina Kwan, the independent journalist whose dogged pursuit of the truth had unraveled the mystery that institutions failed to solve. Her exposé not only saved lives, it had unearthed a pattern of neglect, false accusations, and overlooked pain. Nina was awarded the State Investigative Journalism Medal, a rare honor for someone without the backing of a major news outlet. During the ceremony, she didn't speak about herself. Instead, she named the victims. One by one, the names of the forgotten. But for all the progress, not everything could be fixed. The barbershop. The city council voted unanimously to demolish the barbershop. It wasn't just a building anymore. It had become a symbol of grief. Some protested, calling it a crime scene, a place that should remain untouched for forensic study. But others, especially the victims' families, wanted it gone. Erased. The demolition took 10 minutes. In its place, a memorial plaque was set into the sidewalk. In memory of lives lost, trust broken, and truth uncovered. May we never look away again. People left flowers, candles, even scissors, some old and rusted, symbolic of the tool Jason used not only to cut hair, but to sever futures. And for a moment, everything feels quiet.